Shut up, filthy human. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. In the vast, gleaming halls of the Galactic Confederacy's central judicial complex, a lone human stood in chains, surrounded by beings who saw him as nothing more than cosmic vermin. The massive crystalline dome of Judicial Station Epsilon 7 hung in orbit around the gas giant Tarsones, its iridescent surfaces reflecting the golden light of the system's twin stars. The station served as the primary legal hub for this sector of the galaxy, where representatives from over 300 sentient species convened to uphold the Confederacy's laws and settle disputes between worlds. It was a place of order, ceremony, and ancient tradition, a place where the hierarchy of galactic civilization was strictly maintained. And humans were at the bottom of that hierarchy. Tyler Grant shifted uncomfortably as the gravitational adjusters in his shackles compensated for the station's slightly lower gravity. The standard-issue prisoner jumpsuit hung loosely on his tall, lean frame, its dull gray fabric a stark contrast to the ornate, colorful garments worn by the various alien officials bustling around the antechamber. The blue identification band on his wrist marked him as human, a classification that had become synonymous with primitive, volatile, and dangerous in Confederacy space. He'd been waiting for nearly 6 hours, watching as other defendants, wealthy merchants, diplomatic representatives, and even a few military officers from various species were processed ahead of him. Humans always waited last. It was an unspoken rule. Prisoner 7293H announced a melodious voice over the intercom, the translator rendering the alien syllables into standard galactic English. Proceed to Chamber 12 for arraignment. The 2 Zentari guards flanking Tyler activated his mobility restraints with a gesture. The tall, reptilian beings towered over him by at least 2 feet, their scaled skin shifting through patterns of blue and green as they communicated silently through chromatophores. Like most Zentari, they regarded humans with a mixture of disdain and caution, viewing the species as both inferior and unpredictable. Move, human, the one on the left commanded, its translator pendant converting the series of clicks and whistles into harsh, clipped speech. The High Judge doesn't like to be kept waiting. Tyler nodded silently, keeping his expression neutral as they led him down a long corridor lined with holographic displays showing the history of Confederacy law. The murals depicted the enlightened species bringing order to the chaotic, younger races, with humans notably portrayed as particularly difficult to civilize. It was propaganda masquerading as history, but Tyler knew better than to comment. Chamber 12 was smaller than the main courtrooms, but no less imposing. Tiered seating rose in a semicircle around a central platform, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some were present physically, others appeared as hovering holographic projections. All fell silent as Tyler was escorted to the defendant's position, a small circular platform in the center of the room. At the highest point of the chamber, on a raised dais of polished obsidian, sat High Judge Zularin of the Valdari, one of the founding species of the Confederacy. The Valdari were ancient, their civilization having achieved space travel when humans were still figuring out bronze tools. They resembled something between mantids and felines, with elongated limbs, iridescent compound eyes, and a characteristic ridge of sensory spines running from their heads down their backs. Zolarin's official robes of office, layers of shimmering fabric in deep purple and gold, enhanced his already imposing presence. The High Judge's compound eyes gleamed as they focused on Tyler, antennae twitching slightly in what the human recognized as disgust. Human Tyler Grant, Zolarin's voice boomed through the chamber, the translation software struggling to properly convey the multiple tonal layers of Valdari speech. You stand accused of theft of restricted technology, unauthorized access to Confederate secure networks, transmission of classified information, and, most seriously, espionage against the Confederacy. The judge's compound eyes narrowed. How do you plead? Before Tyler could respond, the prosecuting attorney, A Nexian with pale blue skin and 4 arms stepped forward. Honored Judge, given the severity of the charges and the nature of the accused, I recommend we proceed directly to sentencing. The evidence against this human is overwhelming. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. It wasn't an unusual suggestion when it came to human defendants. The Confederacy's judicial system prided itself on efficiency, and trials involving lesser species were often abbreviated. Tyler cleared his throat. I request the right to speak in my defense, as guaranteed under Article 17 of the Confederacy Charter. The chamber fell silent. It was rare for a human to cite Confederacy law, and rarer still for one to demand full procedural rights. Most accepted whatever punishment was handed down, knowing that resistance typically only made things worse. High Judge Zollerin's sensory spines bristled visibly, a sign of irritation that didn't require translation. You have been assigned a Confederacy advocate, human. Allow them to speak on your behalf. Your kind's understanding of our legal system is limited at best. Tyler stood straighter, meeting the judge's compound gaze directly. Another breach of protocol, as lesser species were expected to show deference by avoiding eye contact with founding species members. With all due respect, High Judge, I am invoking my right to self-representation under precedent case Lorix versus the Confederacy Council, Judicial Year 7329. As the defendant, I have the right to present my own defense when the charges involve potential capital punishment. A wave of surprised chittering, hooting, and electronic pulses, the various sounds of shock from different species, swept through the chamber. The Nexian prosecutor's skin flushed to a deeper blue, a sign of annoyance. Silence. Zollerin slammed a ceremonial staff against the floor. His compound eyes fixed on Tyler with renewed intensity. How does a maintenance worker from a backwater human colony know of Lorix versus Council? Tyler remained calm. I studied Confederacy law during my time working on Diplomatic Station Gamma. It was a personal interest. More likely espionage preparation, hissed the prosecutor. Zollerin raised a clawed hand. Irregardless of how this human came to know our laws, he is technically correct. The precedent exists. The High Judge leaned forward, mandibles clicking in what Tyler recognized as amusement. Very well, human. You may represent yourself. It will make little difference to the outcome. The judge gestured to a holographic display that appeared before Tyler, showing a complexity of evidence files. The prosecution has submitted extensive documentation of your crimes. Security footage from restricted areas, unauthorized data transfers, encrypted communications with unknown parties, stolen technology recovered from your quarters. Zollerin's voice took on a condescending tone. Would you like to examine the evidence before attempting your defense? Tyler nodded. I would, Your Honor. Proceed then. The High Judge settled back, clearly expecting this to be a brief and futile exercise. Tyler began navigating through the evidence files, his movements deliberate and practiced. Several of the observing officials exchanged glances. A human shouldn't be this comfortable with Confederacy interfaces. As he worked, Tyler could hear whispered conversations in the gallery. Typical human arrogance. They always think they're clever. This will be entertaining, at least. After several minutes of review, Tyler looked up. I'm ready to present my defense, High Judge. This should be brief, Zollerin said, not bothering to hide his disdain. Proceed, human. Though I warn you, theatrics and emotional appeals have no place in this chamber. We are beings of logic and reason, unlike your kind. Tyler nodded respectfully, though his eyes revealed a sharp intelligence that made several of the observers shift uncomfortably. I'll be direct, then. I request that all charges be dismissed immediately. Laughter rippled through the chamber, various sounds from different species, but all conveying the same sentiment, ridicule. Shut up, filthy human, Zollerin snapped, his patience visibly thinning. You were caught with restricted technology in your possession, recorded in secure areas where you had no authorization, and documented transmitting classified data. The evidence is irrefutable. The evidence is fabricated, Tyler replied calmly. The chamber erupted into sounds of outrage. Zolarin slammed his staff against the floor repeatedly until order was restored. You dare accuse the Confederacy of falsifying evidence? The High Judge's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper, his translator barely picking up the subharmonics of threat in his natural speech. This is precisely why humans remain under probationary status in the Confederacy. Your species constantly questions authority, challenges established hierarchies, and refuses to accept your proper place. Tyler remained unperturbed. I'm not accusing the Confederacy, Your Honor. I'm accusing specific individuals within Confederate intelligence of framing me to cover their own activities. The Nexian prosecutor stepped forward. This is absurd. The human is attempting to create confusion through wild accusations. Let him continue, Zolarin said, settling back. I'm curious to see how creative human desperation can be. Tyler nodded thanks and proceeded to access the main evidence file. First, let me address the security footage showing me in restricted areas. He manipulated the holographic interface with surprising dexterity, isolating several video clips. These recordings have been altered. Preposterous, the prosecutor interjected. If I may, Tyler continued, unfazed. I'd like to apply standard Confederacy authentication protocol Zeta 12 to these files. The request was so unexpected that even Zolarin seemed taken aback. Zeta 12 was an advanced verification process used primarily for evidence in high-level diplomatic disputes, not typically applied in cases involving non-founding species. You are familiar with Zeta 12? Zolarin's tone had shifted slightly, a note of surprise breaking through his contempt. I am, Tyler replied simply, and I request its application now. After a moment of hesitation, Zolarin gestured to a technician. Apply the protocol. The technician, a Telarx with multiple tendrils that moved over the control interfaces with practiced ease, input a series of commands. The holographic display flickered, and sections of the footage began to glow red, indicating tampering. Murmurs swept through the chamber again, but this time with a different tenor. As you can see, Tyler continued, his voice steady. These recordings have been spliced together from different time periods. My presence in these restricted areas was edited in. He highlighted timestamp inconsistencies that were now visible thanks to the authentication protocol. The prosecutor hurried forward. This proves nothing. Technical glitches in the authentication system. Zeta 12 has a 99.97% accuracy rating. Tyler interrupted. It's why it's used for diplomatic evidence. Its reliability is documented in over 15,000 cases. The High Judge's antennae twitched rapidly, a sign of agitation among the Valdari. Continue, human. Tyler moved to the next piece of evidence. Regarding the stolen technology found in my quarters, he manipulated the interface again, bringing up inventory logs. According to standard Confederacy evidence protocols, all seized technology should have manufacturing serial numbers documented. These items don't. He highlighted the relevant sections of the evidence report. Furthermore, the quantum signatures of these devices indicate they were activated for the first time just hours before they were discovered in my quarters. I was already in custody by then. The chamber had grown unusually quiet. Even the typically dismissive observers were paying close attention now. As for the unauthorized data transfers, Tyler continued, bringing up another set of files. If you examine the encryption patterns, you'll notice they use a very specific algorithm. He isolated the code sequence and enlarged it. This is a Zentari military intelligence encryption algorithm, not available to civilian contractors like myself. One of the Zentari officials in the upper tier shifted uncomfortably. How would you recognize a classified Zentari encryption pattern, human? Zolarin asked, his voice sharp with suspicion. Tyler smiled slightly. Because it was documented in the Calixian intelligence leak 3 years ago. The information is technically public, though not widely known. The Nexian prosecutor was now visibly distressed, all four arms moving in agitated patterns. This is misdirection. Clever manipulation of facts to create doubt where none should exist. Is it? Tyler asked, turning to face the gathering. Or is it possible that I was deliberately framed because I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know? He returned to the evidence display, bringing up his work logs. For the past 8 months, I've been assigned to maintenance duties on communication arrays throughout Diplomatic Station Gamma. 3 weeks ago, during routine maintenance on Array 7 Delta, I discovered an unauthorized splice in the quantum entanglement transmitter, a splice that was diverting copies of all diplomatic communications to an unknown receiver. The revelation sent a shock wave through the chamber. Quantum entanglement transmitters were the backbone of secure Confederacy communications. Tampering with one was not only technically difficult, but a severe breach of security. I followed proper protocol and reported the splice to my supervisor, Tyler continued. 2 days later, I was arrested for espionage. Interesting timing, wouldn't you say? Zolarin's compound eyes narrowed to slits. These are serious allegations, human. Do you have proof of this splice? I do. Tyler manipulated the interface again, bringing up a new file. Before reporting it, I documented everything according to Confederacy Maintenance Directive 459. I also took the liberty of tracing the quantum signature of the receiver. He displayed a series of coordinates. The diverted communications were being sent to a facility on Zentari Prime, specifically to the headquarters of Section 8. The chamber erupted into chaos. Section 8 was the Zentari's clandestine intelligence division, officially disavowed but widely known to exist. For centuries, the Zentari had been positioning themselves to challenge the Valdari's dominance within the Confederacy, a political reality acknowledged but rarely discussed openly. Silence, Zolarin roared, his voice cutting through the din. The chamber gradually fell quiet, though the tension remained palpable. The High Judge's compound eyes swept the room before settling back on Tyler. When he spoke, his tone had changed entirely. The contempt was gone, replaced by calculating assessment. Human Tyler Grant, Zolarin said slowly. You are either remarkably clever or remarkably foolish to bring this information forward in such a public forum. I had limited options, Your Honor, Tyler replied. When you're framed by a powerful intelligence agency, conventional channels tend to be unreliable. Zolarin's mandibles clicked rapidly, a Valdari expression of intense thought. After a long moment, he turned to address the Zentari representatives in the upper tier. Ambassador Kress, do you wish to address these accusations against your government? A tall Zentari rose slowly, his scales shifting to a deep, formal purple. Ambassador Kress was known as a moderate within Zentari politics, often at odds with the more aggressive military factions. The Zentari hegemony categorically denies any unauthorized surveillance of Confederate diplomatic communications, he stated formally. However, he paused, his scales rippling with subtle patterns. In the interest of transparency and Confederacy unity, we will permit an investigation into these allegations. Tyler recognized the political maneuvering. The ambassador was distancing the official Zentari government from the actions of Section 8, preserving deniability while offering a concession that would appear reasonable to the gathered officials. The Nexian prosecutor, looking increasingly uncomfortable, attempted to regain control. Your Honor, we have strayed far from the original charges. This human stands accused. This human, Zolarin interrupted, has raised questions that cannot be dismissed. The High Judge's antennae quivered with what appeared to be reluctant respect. In light of the evidence presented and the serious counter-allegations, I am ordering a full investigation into both the charges against Tyler Grant and his claims regarding Zentari intelligence activities. The prosecutor's blue skin paled further. But, Your Honor, furthermore, Zolarin continued, ignoring the interruption, I am placing the human under protective custody, not as a prisoner, but as a material witness. He will be housed in the diplomatic quarters section of this station until the investigation is complete. Tyler's expression remained neutral, though his eyes betrayed a flash of satisfaction. This was more than he had dared hope for. The High Judge raised his staff, signaling the formal end of the proceedings. This session is adjourned. The investigation team will be assembled immediately. his compound eyes fixed on Tyler once more. It seems, human, that you understand our systems better than we anticipated. That is noteworthy. As the chamber began to empty, with officials hurrying off to communicate these unexpected developments to their governments, Tyler found himself approached by a Valhari aide. The High Judge requests a private audience with you, the aide informed him quietly, after you have been situated in your new quarters. Tyler nodded, unsurprised. He had gambled everything on this hearing, knowing that the truth, revealed in the right forum, at the right time, could be more powerful than any weapon. As the security protocols on his restraints were reconfigured from prisoner to protected witness, he allowed himself a small smile. The Confederacy had underestimated humans for centuries. Perhaps it was time for that to change. Tyler's new quarters in the diplomatic section of Judicial Station Epsilon 7 were a stark contrast to the holding cell where he'd spent the previous weeks. The spacious room featured large viewports overlooking the swirling atmosphere of the gas giant Tarsones, comfortable furnishings adjusted for human physiology, and even a small collection of Earth literature, a diplomatic courtesy rarely extended to humans. He had just finished washing away the grime of the detention center when the door chimed, announcing a visitor. The security field flickered, allowing High Judge Zolarin to enter, though the Valdari was now dressed in less formal attire. Human, Zolarin greeted, his compound eyes scanning the room with characteristic Valdari thoroughness. I trust these accommodations are adequate. They're excellent, Your Honor, Tyler replied, gesturing to the seating area. Thank you. The Valdari settled onto a specially designed support chair, his elongated limbs folding gracefully. Up close, without the imposing backdrop of the judicial chamber, Zolarin seemed less intimidating, though no less regal. You have created quite a diplomatic situation, the High Judge said without preamble. The Zentari delegation has been in continuous communication with their homeworld since your hearing. 3 senior members of their intelligence directorate have already been recalled. Tyler nodded. They're looking for scapegoats. Indeed. Zolarin's mandibles clicked lightly. What interests me, however, is you, Tyler Grant. You are not what you appear to be. I'm a maintenance technician, Tyler replied with a slight smile. That part is true. A maintenance technician with an extraordinary knowledge of Confederacy law, intelligence protocols, and data forensics. Zolarin's antennae twitched in what Tyler recognized as the Valdari equivalent of raised eyebrows. These are not typical skills for your position or your species. Tyler considered his response carefully. The hearing had gone as planned, but this private conversation could be even more significant. Humans adapt quickly, he said finally. We learn what we need to survive in whatever environment we find ourselves in. When your species restricts us to certain roles in galactic society, we become very good at those roles, and we pay close attention to the systems that control our lives. Zolarin was silent for a moment, his compound eyes unreadable. You speak as a representative of your species, not merely for yourself. It wasn't a question, but Tyler answered anyway. I speak as someone who believes humans deserve the same opportunities and rights as other sentient beings in the Confederacy. Your species has been on probationary status for valid reasons, Zolarin countered, though his tone lacked the dismissive edge it had carried in the courtroom. Humanity's history is filled with conflict, resource exploitation, and aggression. When you achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered the Confederacy, your first instinct was to establish military outposts rather than diplomatic channels. That was over a century ago, Tyler replied evenly, and historical records from that period are selective in their perspective. Human colonies have been peaceful members of Confederacy space for 3 generations now, yet we remain restricted from full participation, confined to labor and service roles, excluded from governance and higher education. The High Judge's antennae twitched again. You believe this is unjust. I believe it's wasteful, Tyler corrected. The Confederacy prides itself on efficiency, on utilizing the unique strengths of each member species. Yet it has failed to recognize what humans could contribute if given the chance. And what might that be? There was genuine curiosity in Zolarin's multi-toned voice. Tyler gestured toward the viewports, where the vast expanse of space stretched beyond the gas giant. Innovation, adaptation, problem-solving. Humans thrive on challenges. We always have. Our brief history compared to the founding species means we evolved to change quickly, to find unusual solutions, to question established methods. He leaned forward slightly. The very traits the Confederacy considers disruptive could be invaluable in the right context. While older civilizations excel at stability and preservation, humans excel at growth and transformation. Zolarin's compound eyes studied Tyler with renewed intensity. These are compelling arguments, but they do not explain how a maintenance technician acquired the specific knowledge you demonstrated today. Tyler smiled. No, they don't. A sound emerged from Zolarin that the translator rendered as a short laugh. You are unusually direct for a being in your position. My position has improved considerably since this morning, Tyler observed. I'm no longer facing execution for fabricated charges. True, the High Judge acknowledged. Though your situation remains precarious, you have embarrassed the Zentari intelligence apparatus publicly. They will not forget that. I'm counting on it, Tyler said. Public exposure is the best protection I have. Too many people are watching now. Zolarin rose from his seat and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the swirling storms of Tarsones. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, the translator struggling to capture the subtle harmonics. The Confederacy has existed for over 12,000 years, human. In that time, many species have joined our collective. Some, like the Valdari, the Zentari, and the Nexians, achieved technological advancement gradually, over millions of years of stable evolution. Others, like humans, developed rapidly, almost explosively, compressing cultural and technological growth into mere thousands of years. He turned back to face Tyler. This difference in developmental timing has always created tension. The founding species regard rapid developers with caution. Your kind tends toward volatility, unpredictability. Change can be frightening, Tyler acknowledged, especially to civilizations built on consistency and tradition. But change is also inevitable. The question is whether the Confederacy will adapt to incorporate new perspectives or stagnate by clinging to old hierarchies. The High Judge's sensory spines bristled slightly, not in anger this time, but in what appeared to be contemplation. You speak dangerous ideas, human. I speak truthful ones, Tyler countered. The Zentari surveillance operation I uncovered isn't an isolated incident. There are factions within every major power in the Confederacy positioning for advantage. The balance that has maintained peace for millennia is shifting. Zolarin returned to his seat. And where do humans fit in this shifting balance? That depends on the Confederacy, Tyler replied. Continue to marginalize us, and humans will remain frustrated outsiders, potentially vulnerable to exploitation by factions promising better treatment. Integrate us fully, recognize our unique contributions, and humans could help strengthen the Confederacy against these internal divisions. You offer a partnership where many would expect submission, Zolarin observed. Forced submission breeds resentment, Tyler said. Partnership breeds loyalty. The High Judge was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes never leaving Tyler's face. Finally, he spoke in a different tone, more formal, almost ceremonial. You are not merely a maintenance technician, Tyler Grant. You represent something more organized. I would know who I am truly speaking with before we continue this discussion. Tyler hesitated, then nodded. The moment had come sooner than he expected, but there was no turning back now. I'm a field operative for the Human Integration Initiative, an organization working toward full recognition of human rights and potential within the Confederacy framework. A human advocacy group, Zolarin said, his tone neutral. Much more than that, Tyler corrected. We're a network of humans and sympathetic members of other species throughout Confederate space. Scientists, engineers, cultural specialists, legal experts, all working together to demonstrate that humans are ready for full participation in galactic society. And the evidence you presented today? We've been tracking the Zentari surveillance operation for months, Tyler admitted. When I discovered the physical evidence of the splice, it provided an opportunity to expose it in a way that couldn't be quietly buried. By allowing yourself to be arrested and charged with serious crimes, Zolarin said, a note of what might have been respect in his voice. A significant personal risk. Tyler shrugged. Calculated risk. We knew the evidence against me was fabricated. We also knew that a public hearing before a high judge, particularly one with your reputation for procedural correctness, would provide the forum we needed. You researched me specifically, Zolarin realized. We did, Tyler confirmed. Your judicial record shows a consistent adherence to established law, even when it might conflict with political expedience. You've ruled against Valdari interests 7 times in major cases when the evidence supported the opposition. That made you predictable in the best sense. The High Judge's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound that Tyler now recognized as Valdari amusement. I have been manipulated by a human. How unprecedented. Not manipulated, Tyler corrected carefully. We simply created circumstances where your own principles and commitment to justice would lead to a fair hearing. Everything that happened in that courtroom was according to Confederate law. A distinction without much difference, Zolarin said, though without rancor. Though I admit, your approach was elegant. He rose again, pacing the room with the characteristic fluid movement of the Valdari. Your human integration initiative, how extensive is it? Tyler weighed his response. Extensive enough to have representatives on 27 major Confederate worlds and stations. Extensive enough to have documented 17 separate instances of systematic discrimination against humans in violation of Confederate equal treatment statutes. Extensive enough to have compiled evidence of corruption and power abuses by officials from several species. Evidence we've refrained from using because we seek partnership, not leverage. Zolarin stopped pacing. You have been busy indeed. Necessity drives innovation, Tyler said simply. The High Judge seemed to come to a decision. The investigation into the Zentari surveillance operation will proceed, as announced. It will uncover significant breaches of Confederate security protocols and likely lead to a major reorganization within their intelligence services. He fixed Tyler with his compound gaze. What happens after that depends partly on you, Tyler Grant, and this initiative you represent. I sit on the Special Committee for Species Integration, the very body that has maintained humanity's probationary status for the past century. Tyler's pulse quickened, though he kept his expression neutral. This was an unexpected development and a potentially momentous opportunity. The committee meets in 6 standard weeks, Zolarin continued. I propose that you, and appropriate representatives from your organization, prepare a formal presentation on humanity's readiness for advanced status within the Confederacy. Present your evidence, your achievements, your vision for human integration. The committee will hear you. That would be unprecedented, Tyler said, unable to fully conceal his surprise. As was your performance in my courtroom today, Zolarin replied. The Confederacy has perhaps been overly cautious in its assessment of human potential. Recent events suggest this caution may have led us to overlook valuable contributions your species could make. Tyler nodded slowly, mind racing with implications. The Human Integration Initiative would welcome this opportunity, High Judge. Good. Zolarin moved toward the door. You will remain under protective custody until the Zentari investigation concludes, for your safety as much as anything else. Use the time to prepare your case. At the threshold, the Valdari paused. One more thing, Tyler Grant. The manner in which you presented your defense today, the precision, the attention to detail, the strategic anticipation of counterarguments. These are qualities the Confederacy values highly. They are also qualities we have not typically associated with humans. He fixed Tyler with a final, penetrating gaze. Perhaps we have been wrong about more than just your potential contribution to our civilization. Perhaps we have fundamentally misunderstood your species from the beginning. With that, the High Judge departed, leaving Tyler alone with the vastness of space visible through the viewport and the even greater possibilities that had just opened before him. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Though still technically under protective custody, Tyler found himself granted increasing freedoms within Judicial Station Epsilon 7 as the investigation into the Zentari surveillance operation proceeded. His quarters became a hub of communication as members of the Human Integration Initiative made contact through officially sanctioned channels, preparing for the unprecedented opportunity to address the special committee. 23 days after the hearing, Tyler sat in one of the station's observation lounges, watching as a sleek diplomatic vessel docked at the primary airlock. He felt a surge of anticipation. This ship carried the initiative's delegation, including several of its founding members. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind him. Tyler turned to find Neela Tarani approaching, a human cultural anthropologist who had been working on Epsilon 7 for several years, and one of the initiative's earliest recruits. In her late 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and keen dark eyes, Neela had spent decades documenting the subtle ways Confederate systems disadvantaged newly incorporated species. Cautiously optimistic, Tyler replied as she sat beside him. The investigation results were even more damning than we anticipated. Section 8 wasn't just spying on diplomatic communications. They were gathering blackmail material on officials from 17 species, including their own government, Neela added. The Zentari ruling council is in chaos. 3 high-ranking counselors have already resigned. Ambassador Kress has been appointed interim security director to clean house. A moderate replacing hardliners, Tyler noted. That's promising. For now, Neela's expression was guarded. Power vacuums tend to create unexpected outcomes. We should remain focused on our opportunity with the special committee. Tyler nodded toward the docking bay. The team has arrived. Lauren Bennett is leading the delegation. Good choice. Neela smiled. If anyone can convince a room full of ancient aliens that humans deserve respect, it's Lauren. Lauren Bennett was something of a legend within the initiative. A brilliant xenolinguist who had mastered 11 Confederate languages, including four that humans weren't officially permitted to learn. She had spent 30 years building bridges between humans and other species, often working quietly behind the scenes to resolve cultural misunderstandings before they escalated to diplomatic incidents. "We've got 6 days to finalize the presentation," Tyler said, checking the time. "Zolarin has arranged for us to use one of the secondary conference chambers for preparation." "And how is our surprising ally, the High Judge?" Neela asked. Tyler considered the question. "Genuine, I think. He's been true to his word so far. The investigation has been thorough and impartial, and he's personally ensured that all our communication requests are approved." "The Valdari pride themselves on integrity," Neela observed. "Once they commit to a course of action, they typically see it through, for better or worse." "In this case, definitely better," Tyler said, rising as the docking procedure completed and the arrival board showed the passengers beginning disembarkation. "Let's go welcome our team." The initiative delegation consisted of 7 carefully chosen representatives, each exemplifying different aspects of human potential. In addition to Lauren Bennett, there was Dr. Marcus Ellis, a xenobiologist whose research on adaptive immune responses had saved thousands of lives across multiple species during the Noval Plague outbreak 3 years earlier. Commander Olivia Hayes, formerly of Earth Defense Force, now a security consultant who had designed integrated defense systems for 15 Confederate outposts in disputed territories. Ethan Cole, a terraform engineer whose innovations had made previously uninhabitable worlds accessible to species with specialized environmental needs. Lily Dawson, a legal scholar who had documented inconsistencies in the application of Confederate law across different species. Seth Warner, a cultural ambassador who had established educational exchange programs between human colonies and 12 other Confederate worlds. And perhaps most surprisingly, Jared Collins, a human who had lived among the Valdari for 40 years, serving as a liaison between their government and human workers. Now in his 70s, Collins had gained rare insight into Valdari culture and psychology, earning their respect through his careful observation of their customs and traditions. Together with Tyler and Neela, they formed a team that represented the best of human capability, achievement, and potential, a living argument for full integration into Confederate society. The conference room assigned to them quickly transformed into a war room of sorts, with holographic displays showing demographic data, legal precedents, scientific contributions, and cultural analyses. The team worked seamlessly, each bringing their expertise to strengthen the presentation they would deliver to the special committee. The key, Lauren explained during one planning session, is to present human integration not as something humans deserve, but as something that benefits the Confederacy as a whole. We need to shift the narrative from human rights to mutual advantage. The data supports that approach, Marcus agreed, highlighting a series of research metrics. Human scientists have produced more innovation patents per capita than any other species in the Confederacy over the past decade, despite severe restrictions on our access to education and resources. And without proper recognition, Lilly added, 73% of these innovations are officially credited to non-human supervisors or institutions. That pattern extends beyond science, Olivia noted. In security operations, human intuition for threat assessment has proven statistically superior to standard Confederate protocols in crisis situations. Yet we're still restricted to junior positions in most security forces. Jared Collins, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. His voice carried the slight harmonic quality that came from decades of adapting his speech patterns to Valdari communication styles. All of this is compelling to us, he said slowly. But we must remember that the committee members, particularly the Valdari and Nexian representatives, value stability above all else. To them, rapid change represents risk. Then we emphasize the controlled nature of our proposed integration, Tyler suggested. Phased implementation, with clear benchmarks and oversight. Precisely, Jared nodded. The founding species respond to structure and process. They need to see that human integration will enhance Confederate stability, not threaten it. As the days passed, their presentation took shape, a comprehensive case for human advancement built on solid data, clear precedent, and strategic foresight. They ran simulations, anticipated counterarguments, and refined their approach until each element was polished to perfection. On the eve of their appearance before the special committee, High Judge Zolarin requested a meeting with the entire delegation. The Valdari arrived at their conference room with minimal ceremony, though he still carried himself with the innate dignity of his species and position. As the team rose to greet him, Tyler noticed that Zolarin's attention seemed to focus immediately on Jared Collins. Liaison Collins, the High Judge said, switching from translated speech to direct Valdari language. It has been many cycles since our paths crossed. Collins responded in the same language, his pronunciation remarkably authentic for a human. The two exchanged what appeared to be formal pleasantries, though the rest of the team could not follow the untranslated conversation. Finally, Zolarin returned to standard speech. I see the Human Integration Initiative has chosen its representatives wisely. We hope the committee will agree, Lauren replied diplomatically. That remains to be seen, Zolarin said. I have come to provide context for tomorrow's proceedings and a warning. The atmosphere in the room shifted perceptibly. The Zentari investigation has created significant political tension within the Confederacy Council, Zolarin explained. While many see it as a necessary corrective to intelligence overreach, others view it as a disruption of established power balances. And where do humans fit in this perspective? Tyler asked. As both catalyst and potential beneficiary of disruption, the High Judge replied, which makes your timing both opportune and dangerous. He moved to the central holographic display, gesturing for permission before activating it. The display showed the current composition of the special committee, 9 representatives from different species, with Valdari, Zentari, and Nexian members holding the senior positions. The committee has traditionally operated by consensus, Zolarin continued. No major status change for any species has been approved without unanimous agreement in over 2,000 years. That's a high bar, Neela observed. Deliberately so, Zalarin acknowledged. However, recent events have created unusual fractures within the committee. The Zentari representatives are in a weakened position due to the surveillance scandal. The Nexians are attempting to leverage this weakness to advance their own standing among the founding species. And the Valdari? Lauren asked carefully, Zalarin's compound eyes fixed on her. We are reassessing long-held positions in light of new information. New information about humans? Tyler pressed. About many things, the High Judge replied cryptically. The Confederacy has existed for 12 millennia by adapting when necessary. The question before us now is whether the current situation requires adaptation. He turned to address the entire delegation. Your presentation tomorrow will face significant opposition. The Nexian representatives, in particular, will resist any suggestion of advancing human status. They have the most to lose if the current hierarchy shifts. Why tell us this? Olivia asked bluntly. Because I believe in procedural fairness, Zalarin replied. And because the outcome of tomorrow's hearing may have implications beyond human integration alone. It may signal whether the Confederacy can evolve to meet new challenges, or whether it will cling to old structures even as they begin to fail. The High Judge moved toward the door. I have said more than is perhaps prudent. Prepare well for tomorrow. The committee will convene at the 9th hour. After he had gone, the room remained silent for a long moment. Well, Lauren finally said, it seems we're playing for higher stakes than we realized. The Valdari never say anything without purpose, Jared Collins noted. Zalarin was sending us a message, and possibly seeking allies for his own agenda. Does that change our approach? Marcus asked. Tyler thought for a moment, then shook his head. We stick to the plan. Our goal remains the same. Demonstrate that human integration strengthens the Confederacy. If that aligns with Zalarin's objectives, all the better. If not, we've come too far to back down now, Lauren finished. Let's get back to work. Tomorrow will be a defining moment, not just for humanity, but possibly for the future of the Confederacy itself. The Chamber of Species Integration was one of the oldest sections of Judicial Station Epsilon 7, its architecture reflecting the classical period of Confederate design. Curved walls of pale blue stone quarried from the Valdari homeworld rose to a domed ceiling inscribed with the original Charter of Rights in the languages of the founding species. The chamber's acoustics were perfect. A whisper from one side could be heard clearly on the other, a design intended to ensure that all voices in deliberation were equal. Of course, as humans had learned over a century of interaction with the Confederacy, theoretical equality and practical reality were often very different things. The Human Integration Initiative delegation entered the chamber precisely on time, taking their places at the presentation platform. Across from them, arranged in a semicircle on elevated seats, sat the 9 members of the special committee, 3 Valdari, 3 Zentari, and 3 Nexians. Behind them, in observer positions, were representatives from 12 other species with full Confederate membership. High Judge Zalarin, as senior Valdari representative, called the session to order with a formal striking of the ceremonial staff against a resonating plate. This special session of the Committee for Species Integration is now convened, he announced, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. Today we hear an unprecedented petition from representatives of humanity, requesting reconsideration of their species' probationary status within the Confederacy. Murmurs rippled through the observer section. Such petitions were rare and rarely successful. Senior Representative Telex of the Nexian Consortium will oversee procedural matters, Zalarin continued, nodding to a pale blue figure seated to his right. Telex rose, the forearms characteristic of his species folded in formal posture. The petitioners will have one standard time unit to present their case. Committee members may then question the petitioners. A deliberation period will follow. Is this understood? Lauren Bennett stepped forward. It is understood and accepted, Senior Representative. Telex's expression was unreadable to human eyes, but his tone carried unmistakable skepticism. Then you may begin. Lauren nodded to her colleagues. and the presentation they had so carefully crafted began to unfold. Each member of the delegation addressed different aspects of humanity's case for integration. Marcus Ellis presented data on human scientific contributions, highlighting innovations that had benefited multiple species across Confederate space. Olivia Hayes detailed how human security perspectives complemented existing Confederate defense protocols, potentially filling critical gaps in threat assessment. Ethan Cole explained how human terraform engineering could expand habitable worlds for numerous species, addressing growing population pressures in central Confederate systems. Lily Dawson outlined legal precedents supporting species advancement, drawing parallels to 6 other species that had successfully transitioned from probationary to full membership status. Seth Warner showcased cultural exchange initiatives that had fostered greater understanding between humans and other Confederate species. Neela Tarani presented demographic projections showing how human population growth and distribution could strengthen Confederate presence in currently underserved sectors. Jared Collins spoke about the philosophical alignment between human adaptability and the Confederate founding principle of diverse strength through complementary abilities. And Tyler Grant concluded with a proposed implementation framework, a phased integration plan with clear milestones, oversight mechanisms, and mutual benefit analyses. Throughout the presentation, the delegation utilized holographic displays, data visualizations, and case studies to support their arguments. They were meticulous, precise, and persuasive, presenting humanity not as supplicants seeking favor, but as valuable partners offering genuine contributions to Confederate civilization. As they concluded exactly on time, a silence fell over the chamber. It was impossible to read the reactions of the committee members, whose species all expressed emotion through physiological cues unfamiliar to human perception. Finally, Telex spoke. The committee will now question the petitioners. Representative Morex. One of the Zentari representatives leaned forward. Since the surveillance scandal, the Zentari delegation had been noticeably subdued in Confederate proceedings, a dramatic change from their typically assertive stance. Your presentation was thorough, Morex acknowledged, scales shifting to a formal pattern of blues and greens. However, you have emphasized human achievements while minimizing human history. Your species emerged from centuries of internal warfare, environmental degradation, and resource exploitation. These patterns reflect fundamental instabilities in human psychology and social organization. It wasn't quite a question, but Lauren responded smoothly. Representative Morex, we acknowledge humanity's complicated history. However, we would note that every current Confederate species underwent similar periods of internal conflict during their development. The Zentari unification wars lasted over 500 years, nearly twice as long as the comparable period in human history. A ripple of color passed through Morex's scales, surprise, perhaps, that a human would reference Zentari history so precisely. Furthermore, Lauren continued, human history demonstrates not just conflict, but remarkable capacity for peaceful resolution and cooperative advancement. Earth's transition from divided nation-states to unified planetary governance occurred in less than a century, one of the fastest peaceful political evolutions recorded among spacefaring species. Morex's scales settled into a neutral pattern. An interesting perspective. Another committee member, a Nexian named Vorex, spoke next. Humans reproduce and develop technologies at concerning rates. Your proposal would grant increased access to Confederate science, potentially accelerating these tendencies further. How can we be assured this would not create destabilizing effects? This time, Marcus Ellis responded. Representative Vorex, human birth rates have actually stabilized significantly over the past century. Our population growth is now comparable to Nexian rates during your third expansion era. As for technology development, the evidence suggests that human innovation flourishes best within structured collaborative environments, not in isolation. He displayed a new set of data charts. These analyses show that human technological advancement has been most sustainable and beneficial when integrated with established knowledge frameworks, precisely what full Confederate membership would provide. The questioning continued for nearly 2 hours, with committee members probing every aspect of the presentation. The delegation responded with patience, precision, and occasional flashes of the distinctive human perspective that set them apart from Confederate norms. Throughout the session, Tyler noted that High Judge Zolarin remained largely silent, observing intently but offering neither challenge nor support. The Valdari representatives followed his lead, their questions focused on procedural details rather than substantive objections. Finally, Telex raised all 4 hands to signal the conclusion of questioning. The committee will now deliberate. Petitioners will withdraw until summoned for the decision. Lauren bowed respectfully. We thank the committee for its consideration. As the delegation filed out of the chamber, Tyler caught a subtle nod from Zolarin, a gesture so slight it might have been imagined. In the antechamber, the team gathered in a tight circle, speaking in hushed tones. They're more engaged than I expected, Neela admitted. Especially the Zentari. They're in a politically vulnerable position, Olivia pointed out. Appearing reasonable here helps rebuild their credibility after the surveillance scandal. The Nexians remain strongly opposed, Lauren observed. Their questions were designed to highlight perceived risks rather than potential benefits. And the Valdari? Tyler asked, looking to Jared Collins. The older man's expression was thoughtful, calculating. They're assessing broader implications beyond just our petition. Something significant is happening behind the scenes. What do you mean? Marcus asked. The Confederacy has maintained the same power structure for thousands of years, Collins explained. 3 founding species sharing dominance, with newer members in subordinate roles. But that balance has been shifting subtly for centuries. The Zentari have been challenging Valdari preeminence. The Nexians have been maneuvering between them. Now the surveillance scandal has disrupted established patterns, creating an opportunity, Tyler realized. Or a crisis, Collins countered. Depends on your perspective. And where do humans fit in this? Seth Warner asked. Lauren smiled grimly. As either a useful ally or a convenient distraction, I suspect. Further discussion was interrupted as an aide appeared at the antechamber entrance. The committee requests the petitioners return. They have reached a decision. The delegation exchanged glances. This was unusually fast for Confederate deliberations, which typically extended for days or even weeks on matters of species status. Good sign or bad? Ethan murmured as they rose to return to the chamber. We'll know soon enough, Lauren replied, leading them forward. The chamber felt different when they re-entered, tenser, with an undercurrent of energy that hadn't been present before. The committee members sat rigidly in their positions, and Tyler noticed that they had arranged themselves differently, no longer grouped by species, but in what appeared to be factions across species lines. Telex called for order, then spoke formally. The committee has considered the petition for advancement of human status within the Confederacy. High Judge Zolarin will deliver the committee's decision. Zolarin rose, his tall form imposing even among the other committee members. The petition before us has raised questions that extend beyond the specific case of humanity. It has prompted this committee to examine the fundamental principles upon which the Confederacy was founded: diversity, complementary strengths, and mutual benefit through cooperation. He paused, compound eyes sweeping across both the human delegation and his fellow committee members. For too long, the Confederacy has operated on assumptions about species capabilities based on development timelines and historical patterns. These assumptions have led us to categorize certain species, including humans, as inherently unsuited for full participation in Confederate governance and advancement. Murmurs rippled through the observer section again. This was an unexpected direction. The evidence presented today, combined with recent events that have challenged our understanding of established power structures, suggests these assumptions warrant reconsideration. Zolarin's voice took on a more formal tone. Therefore, by a vote of 5-4, the committee has decided to approve a modified version of the proposed human integration framework. The human delegation remained professionally composed, though Tyler felt his pulse quicken. 5-4 meant the committee had split across species lines, a radical departure from the consensus model that had governed such decisions for millennia. Humanity will be granted provisional advanced status, Zolarin continued, with a 3-year evaluation period under the oversight of a newly formed Integration Council. This council will include representatives from all current full-member species, including, for the first time, human representatives. He activated a holographic display showing the details of the decision. Educational restrictions will be lifted immediately. Employment limitations will be phased out over 1 standard year. Representation rights will expand in accordance with the proposed framework, culminating in potential full membership status at the conclusion of the evaluation period, pending council approval. Telex, whose species had clearly opposed the decision, rose to formally acknowledge it. The committee's decision is entered into Confederate record. This session is concluded. The ceremonial staff struck the resonating plate once more, and the historic session ended with the same formal gesture that had begun it, though the Confederacy it represented would never be quite the same again. Later that evening, as celebration spread through human communities across Confederate space, Tyler found himself once again in the observation lounge of Judicial Station Epsilon 7. The news had traveled faster than anyone had anticipated, transmitted through both official channels and the informal networks that connected human settlements throughout the galaxy. He stood alone at the viewport, watching as ships came and went against the backdrop of Tarsones' swirling atmosphere, each one carrying beings whose lives would be affected, however slightly, by what had happened today. Contemplating your victory, came a now familiar voice. Tyler turned to find Zolarin approaching, the High Judge moving with the fluid grace characteristic of his species. Contemplating change, Tyler corrected. For better or worse, the Confederacy took a significant step today. Indeed it did. Zolarin joined him at the viewport. Though perhaps not precisely the step you anticipated when you allowed yourself to be arrested for espionage. Tyler smiled slightly. The specific outcome was uncertain. The need for action was not. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, 2 beings from vastly different evolutionary paths, united in their appreciation for the view before them. The vote was 5-4, Tyler finally said. 3 Valdari and 2 Zentari in favor, 3 Nexians and 1 Zentari opposed. That's an unusual coalition. Unusual times create unusual alliances, Zolarin replied. The surveillance scandal revealed vulnerabilities in our system that could no longer be ignored. Some of us have recognized for decades that the Confederacy must evolve if it is to endure for another 12,000 years. And humans are part of that evolution? Potentially, the High Judge acknowledged. Your species brings perspectives and approaches that the founding species sometimes lack. Your adaptability, your creativity in crisis, your willingness to question established methods. These qualities can be disruptive, yes, but also revitalizing. He turned to face Tyler directly. The Valdari have existed as a spacefaring civilization for over 40,000 years. In that time, we have seen great powers rise and fall. The ones that endure are those that can incorporate new strengths without losing their core identity. And that's what today's decision represents. The Confederacy incorporating new strengths. It represents an opportunity, Zolarin said. What comes of it depends on what humanity does with its new status. There will be resistance. The Nexians, in particular, view human advancement as a threat to the established order and to their own position within it. Tyler nodded. We anticipated that. The Integration Initiative is prepared for a challenging transition period. Good, Zolarin said. Because while today was significant, it is merely the beginning. The next 3 years will determine whether this experiment in accelerated integration succeeds or fails, and with it, perhaps the future direction of the Confederacy itself. He gestured to the stars visible beyond the gas giant. There are pressures beyond our borders as well. The Kelvari Dominion continues to expand. The temporal anomaly in the Cygnus sector grows more unstable. These external challenges may make our internal divisions increasingly costly. All the more reason for cooperation, Tyler said. Humans have a saying, united we stand, divided we fall. A simple concept with profound implications, Zolarin observed. Not unlike yourself, Tyler Grant, a maintenance technician whose actions have helped reshape Confederate policy. Tyler smiled. I just provided an opportunity for the truth to be heard. A dangerous truth, Zolarin noted. The kind that changes worlds, or in this case, perhaps an entire civilization. The High Judge's compound eyes studied Tyler with that now familiar intensity. The human representative to the Integration Council will need to understand both Confederate traditions and the necessity for evolution. Someone who can bridge worlds and navigate complex political currents. Someone like Lauren Bennett or Jared Collins, Tyler suggested. They have the diplomatic experience and cultural understanding for such a role. Perhaps, Zolarin acknowledged. Though there is also something to be said for individuals who demonstrate an unusual capacity for strategic thinking and decisive action when circumstances require it. Before Tyler could respond to this implicit suggestion, the High Judge straightened formally. I must attend to other matters. The committee's decision has generated considerable diplomatic activity. As he turned to leave, he added, the maintenance position on Diplomatic Station Gamma will remain vacant, I suspect. Some roles are stepping stones to greater responsibilities. Tyler watched as the Valdari departed, then returned his gaze to the viewport and the galaxy beyond. When he had discovered that surveillance splice 8 weeks ago, he could not have predicted the path it would open, not just for himself, but for humanity's place in the cosmos. The Confederacy was changing. Humanity was changing. And perhaps most remarkably, the relationship between them was changing too, from one of reluctant tolerance to potential partnership. There would be challenges ahead, resistance to overcome, prejudices to dismantle. But today had proven something vital. When given the opportunity to speak truth to power, even a filthy human could change the course of galactic history. Tyler smiled as he watched a small Earth transport ship depart from the station, its lights briefly visible against the swirling storms of Tarsones before it engaged its FTL drive and vanished into the vast promise of the stars. The journey was just beginning. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.